This is our 5th climate summit, and indeed 5 years goes past so very, very quickly. I'll touch on some of the challenges that we faced, but first I want to offer a more general thought to leave you with. As I try to understand the dramatic changes that we've recently seen in world politics, I keep coming back to 2 tightly linked concepts: exclusion and inequality. Why are some people so skeptical about the benefits of trade? Why do they think that climate change is not a serious problem, or even that it's happening at all? In my view, it's not because they found a new economic model that refutes comparative advantage. There's just no such model. Similarly, it's not because they have new data that challenges the correlation between the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and average temperatures. There's just no such data. People reject settled science because they feel materially excluded, because they don't think that they were properly consulted and heard, and because they suspect, or in fact know, that policies which are presented as good for everyone are in fact harming their families, their communities, and their loved ones. To quote Professor Stiglitz at the launch of President Ramaphosa's G20 task force on inequality at the end of last month, he said this: "Inequality has widened to extremes that threaten democracy itself and should be a concern for all of us. The profound rise of the discontents of mismanaged globalization, which in many places has contributed to this growth in inequality, is evident. Our task must now be to translate the public's palpable anger at the great divide into sound, practical, and transformative policy proposals." This is true in general. In the context of climate policy specifically, exclusion and inequality slow down the transition in the global south and create intense and effective resistance to transition in the developed world. In other words, recent political changes have taught us, in a very emphatic way, that there can't be a sustainable transition unless it is also a just one. To be frank, over the past decade, I've often felt that the term just transition was treated in climate discourse as no more than a pious aspiration, or as if the transition would automatically be just because it would secure the long-term future of our planet. Please don't get me wrong. Here at Standard Bank, we are as convinced as ever of the necessity for the transition towards the low-carbon economy. But in order to make sure that this transition actually happens, we at Standard Bank believe that we all have to focus very intently on making sure that the transition is really just, that it is fair, inclusive, and visibly beneficial for all. Turning from the general to the specific, we now find ourselves in a world where, first, many countries' energy policies have shifted from a singular focus on energy transition to a broader imperative, that is, energy security. People want reliable energy that they can afford right now, and they won't sacrifice that for abstractions like the climate or the future. Second, it is becoming increasingly clear that we need to think both about energy systems and about infrastructure more broadly. People want to see large-scale public investment directly making their lives better. Third, we need to build resilience to climate-induced challenges such as extreme weather. People want to see investment making their lives safer. What is Standard Bank's position on all of this? We have taken some flack in the past, but we've always been consistent. When we say we support a just transition, we've always meant it, both the just part and the transition part. Here's what we mean when we say just. Our focus is unequivocally on driving Africa's growth. We make no apologies. And that means that we support a mix of renewable and transitional projects. We are completely clear that African countries have a right, indeed a duty, to use their fossil fuels, to lift themselves out of poverty, a point explicitly recognized in the Paris Agreement. Take EACOP. Yes, there are environmental costs, but these are being minimized. And the net effect on the project is worth it, now and into the future, considering all the facts, which include that East Africa has a right to economic development and that people need energy, they need income, and a healthy and pleasant place to live. Furthermore, EACOP is an important and wholly credible element of Total's own net zero transition plan, providing both relatively low carbon energy and the revenue that they need to make their own transition. And here's what we mean at Standard Bank when we refer to transition. Earlier this year, we updated our climate policy and restated our commitment to continue to reduce the share of our balance sheet that supports upstream oil and gas. We set a new and larger target for sustainable finance. We will mobilize more than 450 billion rand of sustainable finance by 2028. We are already more than halfway to achieving this target, and we are unwavering in our commitment to achieve net zero in our portfolio by 2050. Talking of zero, at Standard Bank we aim to avoid zero-sum thinking. In our experience, change is much more difficult to achieve when people believe that they are at risk of losing out. We therefore aim to frame the climate transition as positive sum. If we get this right, everyone wins.
The financial sector can be the engine of resilience, innovation, and sustainable growth. Africa has contributed least to the climate crisis, yet bears its harshest consequences. Responsibility is not about guilt. It is about opportunity. We cannot change the past, but we can define the future by embedding climate action in every path of development. As the global economy shifts to low carbon and digital production, Africa stands at a crossroads. With our resources, we can build prosperity on a green foundation, and it is encouraging that our banks are beginning to see this potential. Yet the crisis is real. Kenya has endured 3 multi-year droughts in just 15 years. Last year, Southern Africa faced power cuts of up to 20 hours a day. These are not statistics. They are lived tragedies, and resilience is no longer optional. It is imperative. Progress, however, is slowed by mispriced risk, outdated narratives, and costly capital. With the Africa Credit Rating Agency, we can reclaim our story and assert our strength and sovereignty. Financing remains our greatest bottleneck. To close the gap, I propose 2 levers. 1, innovative levies for predictable finance, where aviation and shipping charges can fund clean fuels, green ports, resilient infrastructure, and logistics hubs. Number 2, debt fairness. As Africa called for it in Seville, through faster restructurings, debt pauses, climate resilient clauses, and debt for climate swaps. Unsustainable debt, ladies and gentlemen, must give way to resilience-linked solutions. Colleagues, we must also seize carbon markets, monetizing our forests, mangroves, and renewables to cut emissions and unlock finance. At the same time, we must industrialize. Africa's share of global manufacturing is below 2% and shrinking. Yet with renewable energy as our anchor, we can leapfrog into climate-smart production. This is why Kenya champions the Accelerated Partnership for Renewables in Africa and the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative to mobilize capital alongside governments, partners, and the private sector. Energy is our other frontier. Last year, global clean energy investments exceeded $2 trillion, yet Africa attracted only 2% of it. The gap is stark, but so is the opportunity. For those who know that profit and sustainability are allies, the time is now. Unlock capital for renewables, adaptation and agriculture, infrastructure, and conservation. The returns will be measured in growth, stability, and human dignity. I close by urging us to be bold and decisive. Increase allocations to green investment, remove bottlenecks, be the partners who deliver, and opportunity where others see risk.